3. True creepy Walmart stories. Story 1. The inventory shift. My name is Marcus, and I was 24 years old when this happened. I was working the overnight inventory shift at a Walmart supercenter in rural Tennessee, about 40 miles outside of Nashville. It was a Monday night in late February, around 2:45 a.m., when I was counting stock in the back corner of the store near the garden center, and I heard something that should not have been possible. Footsteps above me, not in the next aisle over, above me, in the ceiling. The store had been closed for hours, and every employee was accounted for on the other side of the building. Before I continue, make sure you hit that subscribe button and leave a comment telling me where you are watching from. Because what I discovered that night changed everything I thought I knew about the place where I worked. The Walmart I worked at was one of those massive supercenters that seemed to stretch on forever. Grocery on one side, general merchandise on the other, with a tire and lube center, a pharmacy, a vision center, and a McDonald's that closed at 10 p.m. The building was probably close to 200,000 square feet, the kind of space where you could walk for 5 minutes and still not reach the other end. I'd been working there for about 14 months, started as a regular stocker, and got moved to the inventory team after showing I was reliable and good with numbers. Inventory shifts happened twice a month, always overnight when the store was closed to customers. We would come in around 10 p.m., wait for the store to close at 11, and then spend the next 8 hours counting every item in our assigned sections. That Monday I was assigned to the garden center and the surrounding areas. It was the far back corner of the store, isolated from where most of the other inventory workers would be counting. The garden center had its own entrance that was locked at night rows of shelving with gardening supplies and a large outdoor section that was sealed off during winter months. It was quiet back there. Too quiet, some people said. A lot of the workers did not like being assigned to that section alone. I did not mind it. I liked the solitude. I could put in my earbuds, listen to podcasts, and work through my counts without interruption. Most nights, I would not see another person for hours at a time. That particular Monday started normally. I clocked in at 10, grabbed my scanner and clipboard, and headed to the garden center. The store was still open for another hour, so there were a few customers wandering around, but my section was empty. I started my preliminary organization getting ready for the actual counting to begin once the store closed. At 11:15, the last customers were ushered out and the doors were locked. The night manager, a guy named Steve, did a walkthrough to make sure no customers were hiding in the restrooms or fitting rooms, a standard procedure that happened every night. All clear. The building was empty except for the 23 employees working inventory. I started my counts around 11:30, working methodically through the shelving unit, scanning barcodes and recording quantities. By 1 a.m., I was about a third of the way through my section. By 2 a.m., I was halfway done. Everything was normal. At 2:45, I was in the back corner of the garden center, counting bags of potting soil stacked on wooden pallets. The lighting back there was dimmer than the rest of the store. Some of the overhead fixtures turned off to save electricity since customers never came to this section at night. I was crouched down, scanning the barcode on a bag near the bottom of the stack, when I heard it. Footsteps, but not on the floor. They were coming from above me. I froze scanner in hand and listened. The sound was unmistakable. The heavy tread of someone walking the slight creak of whatever surface they were walking on. It was coming from the ceiling, from the space between the drop ceiling tiles and the actual roof of the building. I stood up slowly and looked at the ceiling. Standard commercial drop ceiling white tiles in a metal grid framework. There was nothing unusual about it visually, but I could still hear the footsteps moving slowly across the space above my head, heading toward the main part of the store. My first thought was that it must be a maintenance worker checking something with the HVAC system. But that did not make sense. Any maintenance work would have been communicated to the inventory team. We would have been told. And besides, who does maintenance work at 2:45 in the morning? I keyed my radio and called Steve. I told him I was hearing noises in the ceiling above the garden center, asked if there was any maintenance scheduled. He said no, nothing scheduled. All maintenance requests were handled during daytime hours. He asked if I was sure about what I heard. I was sure. I could still hear it. The footsteps had stopped moving, but I could hear something else now. A shuffling sound, like someone settling into position. Steve said he would come check it out. He told me to stay where I was not to go anywhere. Just wait for him. I waited. The garden center was silent, except for the distant hum of the refrigeration units on the other side of the store. I kept my eyes on the ceiling, watching for any movement, any sign of what was up there. Steve arrived about 5 minutes later, along with another inventory worker named Jerome. They had flashlights, and Steve had a stepladder from the maintenance closet. I pointed to where I had heard the sounds. Steve set up the ladder, climbed up, and pushed one of the ceiling tiles aside. He shined his flashlight into the space above. I watched his face change. It went from curious to confused to something else entirely, something like fear. He climbed down quickly and told me and Jerome to come with him. He did not explain. He just walked fast toward the front of the store, radioing for the rest of the inventory team to stop what they were doing and meet at the front entrance. When everyone was gathered, Steve told us the store was being evacuated. He told us to leave our equipment, where it was grab our personal belongings and exit the building immediately. He said the police were being called. We filed out into the parking lot, confused cold, standing around in the February night, wondering what was happening. Steve stayed inside with the night manager from the other store nearby, who had come over to help. About 15 minutes later, police cars started arriving, then more police cars, then an unmarked van. I did not find out what was in the ceiling until 2 days later, when one of the cops who responded came to take my statement. He told me what they found, probably more than he should have, but I think he could see how shaken I was. There was a man living in the ceiling of that Walmart. He had built himself a nest in the space above the garden center, a section that was rarely checked because it was so far from the main areas of the store. He had blankets up there, food wrappers, water bottles, and a bucket that he used as a toilet. Based on the evidence, he'd been living there for at least 2 months. But that was not the worst part. He had drilled small holes in several of the ceiling tiles throughout the store. Holes that let him look down into the aisles, into the fitting rooms, into the employee break room. He had been watching people for months. Employees, customers, anyone who happened to walk beneath him. And he had a notebook, pages and pages of notes about specific people he had been observing. Their physical descriptions, their schedules, their habits. There were entries about me. He knew my name, knew which sections I worked, knew that I liked to listen to podcasts while I counted inventory. He had been watching me work alone in the garden centre for weeks. The police found him hiding in a different part of the ceiling near the loading dock. He had tried to run when Steve discovered his nest moving through the crawl space toward an exit he had identified. He did not make it. He was arrested and charged with criminal trespassing and a bunch of other offences I do not remember. During the investigation, they discovered he had a history. He had done this before at other stores in other states. He would find a large retail building figure out how to access the ceiling space and set up residence. He would stay for weeks or months watching people taking notes, waiting for something. The police would not tell me what he was waiting for. I think they did not want me to know. I quit that job the next day. I could not go back into that building, could not work in the garden centre, knowing that someone had been watching me from above for weeks. Every time I thought about those nights I spent alone in that back corner counting stock, thinking I was by myself, I felt sick. I work at a small hardware store now. Single-story building, no drop ceiling, nowhere for anyone to hide. I can see every corner of the store from the register. I know exactly who is in the building at all times. But sometimes, when I am in a large store, any large store with high ceilings and fluorescent lights, I find myself looking up, checking the ceiling tiles for holes, listening for footsteps where footsteps should not be. Because I know now that the most dangerous places are not the ones that look dangerous. They are the ordinary places, the places we trust, the places where we never think to look up. Story 2. The Layaway Pickup. My name is Jared, and I was 32 years old when this happened. I was a customer at a Walmart in Albuquerque, New Mexico, picking up a television I had put on layaway for my son's birthday. It was a Saturday afternoon in early December, around 4:15 p.m., and the store was packed with holiday shoppers. I had just finished the paperwork at the layaway counter, and an employee told me to go to the back of the store to collect my item from the pickup area. What was supposed to be a 5-minute errand turned into the most terrifying 30 minutes of my life. If you enjoy true scary stories, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. Because what happened in that back room still haunts me to this day. The layaway pickup area was located at the back of the store, past the automotive section, through a set of double doors that said "Pickup" in faded letters. I had never been back there before. When I put the TV on layaway 6 weeks earlier, an employee had taken it from me at the front counter. I did not know what the pickup process involved. The employee at the layaway counter, a young woman who looked like she was having a long day, handed me a receipt and told me to go to the back, give the receipt to whoever was working the pickup window, and they would load my item. Simple enough. I walked through the store, navigating around shopping carts and families and displays of holiday merchandise. The automotive section was quieter, fewer customers, and by the time I reached the double doors to the pickup area, I was essentially alone. I pushed through the doors and found myself in a large back room, Concrete floors, industrial shelving, the kind of space you see in warehouses. There were rows of shelving units holding items waiting for pickup, mostly large boxes containing furniture, appliances, electronics. A counter with a sliding window was on my left, but the window was closed, and nobody was behind it. I looked around for an employee. The room was empty. No workers, no other customers, just me and rows of merchandise. I walked up to the counter and looked for a bell or something to get attention. There was a small sign that said, "Ring for service," but no bell. I waited for a minute, then knocked on the counter. Nothing. I was starting to get frustrated. The store was obviously busy, probably short-staffed because of the holidays, but someone should be back here. I decided to walk around and see if I could find an employee. I walked between the rows of shelving looking for anyone in a Walmart vest. The back room was bigger than I expected, maybe half the size of the main store, and it was arranged in a maze-like pattern with tall shelving units blocking sight lines. About 3 rows deep, I heard voices. Male voices coming from somewhere ahead of me. I walked toward the sound, figuring I had found the employees. I turned a corner and stopped. There were 2 men standing between the shelves, but they were not employees. They were not wearing Walmart vests. They were wearing regular clothes, jeans and hooded sweatshirts, and they were going through boxes on the shelves, opening them, looking inside, closing them again. One of them saw me. He froze his hand still inside a box he had been examining. We made eye contact for a moment that felt much longer than it was. Then he smiled. Not a friendly smile. The kind of smile that says you were not supposed to see this. He said something to the other guy in Spanish too fast for me to understand. The other guy turned around and looked at me. He was bigger than the first one, taller and heavier, with a shaved head and a tattoo on his neck. I took a step backward. I told them I was just looking for an employee that I needed to pick up a TV. I tried to keep my voice calm, casual, like I had not noticed what they were doing. The first guy said there were no employees back here. He said they had all gone to lunch. He said I should probably go back to the front and wait. Something about the way he said it, the way they were both looking at me, told me that leaving was exactly what I should do. I nodded, said, "Okay," and turned to walk back the way I came. I heard footsteps behind me. They were following. I walked faster, trying to remember the route back to the double doors. The shelving units all looked the same, and I had not been paying attention when I walked in. Left turn, right turn, another left. The footsteps behind me were getting closer. I broke into a jog. I could hear them speed up too. One of them said something, yelled something, and I heard the sound of running. I turned a corner and saw the double doors ahead of me, maybe 50 feet away. I sprinted toward them, my dress shoes slapping against the concrete floor, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I hit the doors and burst through into the automotive section. A family with a shopping cart looked at me, startled by my sudden appearance. I did not stop. I kept moving, walking fast through the store, looking over my shoulder. They did not come through the doors after me. I found a manager near the front of the store and told him what happened. I told him there were 2 men in the back room who were not employees, who were going through merchandise, who had chased me when I tried to leave. His face went serious. He grabbed his radio and called for security. The police arrived about 20 minutes later. They searched the back room and found evidence that the two men had been there. Several boxes had been opened, and items were missing. The side door that led to the loading dock was standing open. The men were gone, but they found something else. A knife on the floor between two of the shelving units. A large hunting knife with a black handle. It had been dropped, probably when they ran. The police told me that this was not an isolated incident. There had been a string of thefts at Walmart stores across the region, organized groups that would find ways into the back rooms during busy periods when employees were distracted. Usually, they just took merchandise and left. But sometimes, when someone saw them who should not have seen them, things escalated. They showed me photographs of suspects they were tracking. I identified both men immediately. They were wanted in connection with several incidents, including one where a store employee had been assaulted and hospitalized. The police said I was lucky. They said if I had not run when I did, if I had confronted them or tried to be a hero, things could have ended very differently. The knife was not for opening boxes. I got my TV that day eventually after the police finished their investigation and the store reopened the back room. A manager personally walked me back there and helped me load it into my car. He apologized multiple times for what happened. I set up the TV in my son's room the next morning. He was thrilled with his birthday present. He had no idea that his father had nearly been stabbed in a Walmart storage room 12 hours earlier. I never told him. I never told my wife either. Not the full story anyway. I said there was an issue with the pickup, and I had to wait a long time. I did not want them to worry. I did not want them to know how close I came. But I know. I think about it every time I see a Walmart, every time I see those backroom doors that say employees only or pickup. I think about the maze of shelving, the footsteps behind me, the smile on that man's face when he realized I had seen something I should not have seen. They caught those two men about 3 weeks later during another theft at a store about 50 miles away. They are in prison now. But every time I hear about retail theft on the news about organized groups targeting stores, I wonder how many other people have walked into back rooms and found something they were not expecting. Most of them probably turned around and left and never thought about it again. But some of them, I think, were not as lucky as me. Story 3: The Parking Lot. My name is Devon, and I was 26 years old when this happened. I was finishing up a late-night shopping trip at a Walmart in suburban Phoenix, Arizona, around 11:30 p.m. on a Wednesday night. The store was about to close, and I was one of the last customers pushing my cart through the nearly empty parking lot toward my car in the back row. What should have been a 2-minute walk became a nightmare that I barely escaped. Make sure you are subscribed and have notifications turned on, because this story still makes my hands shake when I tell it. I had been working long hours that week, pulling double shifts at the warehouse where I worked, and I had not had time to do any shopping. By Wednesday night, I was out of basically everything. Food, toiletries, cleaning supplies. I needed to make a trip, even though I was exhausted. I got to the Walmart around 10:45, about an hour before close. The parking lot was maybe a quarter full, which was pretty empty for this location. I parked toward the back, out of habit. I always parked away from other cars to avoid door dings. My car was nothing special, just a 5-year-old Honda Civic, but I took care of it. I grabbed a cart and spent about 45 minutes filling it with everything I needed. By the time I finished and checked out, it was 11:20, and the store was making final announcements about closing. I was one of maybe 6 customers still in the building. I walked out through the main entrance and into the parking lot. The temperature had dropped since I arrived, typical Phoenix winter, where it gets cold at night, even though the days are warm. I was wearing just a t-shirt and jeans, not prepared for the chill. The parking lot was much emptier now than when I arrived. Most of the cars were gone, just a few scattered vehicles here and there. The overhead lights cast pools of orange illumination with shadows in between. I could see my car in the back row alone, no other vehicles near it. I was about halfway across the lot, pushing my cart over the rough asphalt, when I noticed a van parked near my car. It had not been there when I arrived. It was a white cargo van with no windows in the back, the kind you see contractors driving. It was parked 2 spots away from my Civic, facing outward toward the exit. Something about it made me slow down. I couldn't see inside the van because the windows were tinted dark. I could not tell if anyone was in it, but there was no reason for it to be parked way back there. If the driver was shopping, they would have parked closer to the store. I stopped walking and looked around. The parking lot was empty, except for me and that van. The store entrance was maybe 200 feet behind me now. I could see a few employees inside, visible through the glass doors, but no one else outside. I decided I was being paranoid. It was just a van, probably someone who worked at the store and was waiting for their shift to end. I started walking again, but slower, keeping my eyes on the vehicle. When I was about 50 feet from my car, the van's engine started. I stopped. The van did not move. It just sat there, engine running, no lights on. I could not see anyone through the windshield because of the tint, but someone had obviously started that engine. My instincts were screaming at me to turn around and go back to the store. But I was tired, I was cold, and my car was right there. I told myself I was overreacting. I had probably watched too many true crime videos. The van was probably just someone warming up their vehicle before driving home. I started walking again, 30 feet from my car, 20 feet. The van's headlights turned on. I stopped. My heart was beating fast now. The van still was not moving, but those headlights felt like eyes watching me approach. I made a decision. I abandoned my cart in the middle of the lane and pulled out my phone. I dialed 911 as I turned around and started walking back toward the store. I told the dispatcher where I was told her there was a suspicious vehicle in the parking lot. Told her I felt unsafe. She asked me to describe the vehicle. I started to answer, looking over my shoulder as I walked. The van was moving now, slowly rolling forward, heading in my direction. I ran. The cart full of groceries was behind me. My car was behind me. Everything I had just paid for was being abandoned. I did not care. I ran toward the store, toward the lights, toward other people. The dispatcher was still on the line asking me questions. I told her the van was following me, that I was running toward the Walmart entrance, that I needed police now. I could hear the van behind me, the engine getting louder. I did not look back. I just ran. I made it to the sidewalk in front of the store and kept going, slamming through the entrance doors. The employees inside looked up, startled by my sudden appearance. I told them to call security, that someone in a van had been following me. Through the glass doors, I could see the parking lot. The van had stopped about 50 feet from the entrance. It sat there for maybe 5 seconds, engine running, headlights glaring. Then it pulled away, driving towards the exit, disappearing onto the main road. The police arrived about 10 minutes later. They took my statement, got a description of the van, drove around the area looking for it. They did not find anything. One of the officers walked me out to my car to get my groceries and vehicle. The cart was still there where I left it, sitting in the middle of the parking lane. My car was untouched, but there was something on my windshield, a piece of paper tucked under the wiper blade. The officer put on gloves and removed it carefully. He unfolded it, and I saw what was written on it. Next time. 2 words. That was it. Next time. Like a promise. Like a threat. The police took the note as evidence. They said they would investigate, check security footage, try to identify the van. I never heard back from them. Either they did not find anything, or they did not consider it a priority. I did not sleep that night. I kept thinking about that van, about how close I came to reaching my car before it started moving. If I had not been paying attention, if I had not noticed something was wrong, I would have been right next to my vehicle when whoever was in that van made their move, and there would have been no one around to help. I think about the people in that van sometimes. What were they planning? Were they going to rob me? Carjack me? Something worse I will never know, because I ran before they had a chance to show me. That was 3 years ago. I still shop at Walmart sometimes, but never late at night, never when the parking lot is empty. I always park close to the entrance now, under the brightest lights I can find. I check the vehicles around my car before I walk toward it. I pay attention to anything that seems out of place, and I never ever ignore that feeling when something seems wrong. That instinct saved my life. I am sure of it. Another 30 seconds, another few steps closer to my car, and I might not be here to tell this story. The note said next time. I do not know if they meant next time they saw me, or next time with someone else. I do not know if they are still out there parking in dark corners of parking lots, waiting for someone who is not paying attention. What I do know is that shopping carts can be replaced. Groceries can be bought again. But your life, your safety, those are things you cannot get back once they are taken. Run first. Ask questions later. That is what I learned that night in the Walmart parking lot, and that is what I would tell anyone who finds themselves in a situation that doesn't feel right. Trust your gut. Get to safety. Nothing in your cart is worth your life. Those were 3 true creepy Walmart stories. These massive stores are places millions of us visit every week, pushing our carts through familiar aisles, grabbing our groceries and supplies without a second thought. We feel safe because of the bright lights, the security cameras, the crowds of other shoppers around us. But these stories show that sense of safety can be deceiving. The backrooms where employees work alone, the pickup areas where customers wander without supervision, the parking lots that empty out after dark. These are spaces where danger can hide, where predators can wait, where ordinary shopping trips can become survival situations. Pay attention to your surroundings. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong. Do not let the familiarity of a place make you lower your guard. Because Walmart is not just a store. It is thousands of square feet of aisles and back rooms and parking spaces with thousands of people passing through every day. Most of them are just shoppers like you, but some of them are looking for something else. And you never know who you might encounter in the next aisle over, or in the back room, or waiting by your car.